Today I'm going to be working on this dumpling right here. Pretty nasty dent, but I think we'll be able to make it look pretty good. Here's a close-up of the damage. Pretty nice, huh? Look at how tight that is right there. Wow. Lovely. Now, they usually look a lot worse than they actually end up being, but I always say that, and then it ends up becoming a nightmare before it's over with. So, hopefully not. Let's start with step number one. Here I have step number one set up, an infrared heat lamp. So the goal here is to keep this down low, angled up high, so I can have nice heat right here, but it also casting up heat all the way up to this crease right here. So periodically I'll double check and see how hot I'm getting it. But as you can see, I keep this thing uncomfortably close to the bumper. Obviously I wouldn't keep it that close if I was curing paint, but in this sense, the hotter we get this thing, the more even we keep the heat. With just minimal persuasion, we can get this dent to pop out pretty much all by itself. So it's heating up nicely. Just wanted to mention, the thing that people would like to do is they like to get their hand behind here and just force it out without any heat. And what happens when you do that is these high spots right here get even more deformed and they're harder to get worked out flat again. So really, the hotter you get this whole bumper, the better. You almost want it, I wouldn't say melting point, but it's gonna be unbearably hot to touch, and that's what you want. Because once it's hot enough to do that, once I push on this a little bit, just gentle pressure, it'll roll out by itself for the most part, and we'll just have to work on these high spots a little bit. So I'm gonna time lapse this and see if it pops out all by itself or not. Probably won't, but let's just see what happens. Okay, now that I have it ridiculously hot, I'm just gonna see if I can give it some gentle persuasion. See what happens. As you can see, it was just easier to take the bumper right off the car. I did that off camera to spare you the boredom of it, and also sanding this down with 80 grit and a palm sander to pretty much even everything out. And as you can see, it's pretty straight, but there are some low spots in it, right here, here, and there's some distortion right here. So what I'm gonna do is use this product right here to help fill in those low spots. And what's nice about this is it stays flexible, just like the bumper, so it doesn't crack like body filler would if you were to just put body filler on it. So let's swipe some of this on there. gonna let that sit and dry for about 4 hours. I know it sounds like a long time, but I'm gonna go do other things while this sits there so I don't get tempted and start sanding on it before it's ready. So we'll see you back here in a few hours. Okay, so now that this thing is dry enough to sand on, I'm gonna start with 180 grit on a palm sander and just attempt to make a shape here. Alright, now I'm going to chase it with some 220 grit on an interface pad to kind of smooth up these sand scratches. Now I'm going to switch over to 400 grit and sand it down nice and smooth before we put primer on it. Scotch Brite and scuff up this area that I'm going to prime. That way the primer can stick to the paint. I'm gonna wipe it down with some prep solvent and get all the dust, dirt, and oil that were on my hands off of it before we prime it. Now the next thing I'm gonna do is prime it. I like to use this Transtar 2-in-1 primer. I find that it sticks really well to raw plastic bumpers or any plastic repair. It adheres really well and it's easy to sand, and it leaves a good finish. Another thing to note too is you want to put these coats on nice and thin and then follow it by maybe one heavier coat at the very end. But if you pile heavy coat after heavy coat on it, it doesn't dry all the way through, and that's what can cause some paint problems later on. So we'll just let this sit here and dry for a few minutes before our second coat. Let's sand this thing down and get it ready for paint. First thing I'm going to use is some dried powdered guide coat. This will help us to see how far to sand the primer. scuff up the rest of this bumper that I couldn't sand with the sander with some red Scotch Brite. Now my favorite part, the clear coat. Let's see how it turns out. All right, not too scabby. I think it turned out pretty decent. Well, there it is. Not too bad. Let me know what you think.